Amen. Almonds. Hello.
Almonds.
It is I, Scotty, and Sarah.
You said it quicker this time. Yay.
It is us.
Yes.
It is the two of us. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try.
Okay, they're going to turn off some minute.
Okay, no. You're probably right.
No.
Don't. Welcome back. This is episode 4. Episode 4 of Don't Screw Up Your Relationship by two people that are not relationship experts. However, we have both screwed up relationships and we have
been screwed over
in relationships. So, let's jump right back into this. If you've been following, and many of you have, and I thank you very much for that, just a reminder right back here, that's a YouTube award. It's not a big deal. Do you have one? So what we're talking about is something that's very important in relationships. It is trauma brain, not
traumatic brain injury.
Not traumatic brain injury, which Muhammad Ali had. And I said that the other week, not being, I wasn't being flippant about it. That's what he had from actually too many punches to the head from boxing. And a lot of sports players as well have the same issue. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking specifically about trauma brain in life, but as it applies to relationships. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, just to catch you up, we gave a definition, and really Sarah hit the nail on the head and gave us a fantastic definition that trauma brain is when you've had something happen to you, an experience, a past experience, and you come into the present day and something happens that triggers you, and then that causes you to act, and this is what you said, act out of character.
Right.
Because it takes you right back to whatever that experience was. So it could be, it's probably, I guess, most easily understood as being in a bad relationship, and worst case scenario being abused.
Right.
And then you come into a new relationship and your partner says something or does something that then triggers you, and you are no longer acting the way you, as the healthy you, now you're back in the previous.
Right.
So that's the definition that we're working with. So we're going to take the next few episodes and deal with this. But what we want to talk about is, since we have the definition of it and people suffer from it, we both suffer from it at different, varying degrees at different times. But how to deal with trauma brain. So your input on how to deal, some ways that you can deal with trauma brain as an individual, as in a relationship.
Well, and I think I really want to talk about patience, having patience with someone going through trauma brain, having trauma brain, where maybe you're the one that isn't dealing with it, but you're the one that has to sort of stand in front of it. And why it's so important that when you get into your next relationship after being in a traumatic one, that you really get into a relationship with someone who is patient, who is not going to counter your trauma reaction. They're not going to try to top your trauma reaction. Whereas I think sometimes in a fight, especially, where we have a tendency to want to, well, you raised your voice, so I'm going to raise my voice, and then you're going to raise it higher, and I'm going to try to match you, and then it becomes this stair step until it's...
Or competition.
Yeah, until it's just completely... It's just broke out into a battle, literally.
Yeah, piling on. It's kind of snowballs and becomes something bigger.
Right.
people, I think if you are in a relationship with somebody, now this is difficult if you're in an ongoing relationship, your current relationship, but if you're realizing you have trauma responses from trauma brain, if your partner is not going to take it serious,
Right.
then you're never there. It's almost like a death nail, because you have to be able to understand. It's not something. This is maybe something you could talk to in response of. It's not something that you can say. Just somebody says, "Oh, well, I don't like the way you said that, so now, oh, that makes me feel less than because my father talked to me that way, my
Right.
mother, my ex, whatever." You can't. A partner can't just look at you and say, "Stop acting that way."
Right. Exactly.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way because at that point, trauma is speaking, not your partner. Your partner is not speaking to you. It is trauma that is manifesting itself through your partner. So it doesn't work to look at someone and say, why are you acting like, just stop acting that way. Just
Right.
stop it. Like you just said, it doesn't work that way. You can't do that. And trust me, nobody wants to shut off trauma brain more than the person that it's affecting.
That has trauma brain.
Right.
So you have to be patient with somebody, and because if the shoe was on the other foot, and it probably is, because I think more people have trauma brain and trauma response than what they let on. Some people just say, "Well, that's just how I'm wired," or "That's how it's
Right.
always been." But you can overcome. We ended the last episode talking about any learned response can be unlearned. And if you have a response, you probably have to learn another response to counteract it.
Right.
So if you have a
healthy response.
A healthy response, right.
And
exactly.
in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that an excuse for trauma brain is violence. That is not.
Right.
That is not acceptable in any way. You don't get to become violent and then turn around and say, "Oh, it was just my trauma brain response." That's not ever okay. If you have a tendency towards violence with your partner, then you need to seek professional therapy, because that is never ever okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right.
Throw that in there.
No, that's absolutely correct. So a partner who is patient. So you should be able to tell your partner, "I'm having a moment with trauma brain," and what's the response of the partner?
It should always be, "Okay, how can I help?
Okay.
What's causing this? What did I say or do, or what environmental changes happen around you to put you into that trauma response?"
So this is something that we deal with, both of us, on the aspect of trauma brain. People have issues with trust. People have issues with communication. And trauma brain can play into all of that. But one of the things that I know, since we've talked about, you can follow us, because we'll either get it right or tell you what not to do.
One or the other.
One or the other. We are like Babe Ruth. We're either gonna strike out, or we're gonna knock it out of the park. One or the other. But
what not to do.
Yeah, what not to do. So we got about 5 minutes or so, and we'll obviously carry this on. But what we have done, or what I have tried to do, and you can keep me honest in front of all the good people, but is when you have your moments of trauma brain, is to just stop and say,
Honesty,
Yeah, I don't know what to do. What can I do?
that's one of the things that I had to learn coming into a healthy relationship is how to be honest about what's happening. Like what is actually really going on? Why am I having these thoughts, these feelings, these reactions? And I really had to be honest with you and say before it escalated to an actual reaction, I had to become comfortable in our dynamic and in our relationship to be able to say, you know what, I can talk about this and be vulnerable and be honest before it escalates to a point that I'm just sort of lashing out. Not violently, but just, I would just shut down, you know, sometimes my anger, if I yell about something that has nothing to do with us, then that is where I can usually generally squash it and I can say, I'm having a trauma brain response.
A bad moment. Yeah. And I'm here for you.
I know.
I will be here for you.
We have the people. I'm just kidding. You actually are a very good singer.
Well, thank you. That's because you're tone deaf. You don't hear my voice coming out.
The opera major was tone deaf. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you can sing. She was an opera major. I think she was accepted into Juilliard.
Keep with your point, honey.
She's like a superstar. I'm honored to be next to her. But she doesn't have a YouTube award. But so in dealing, she missed it by that much. But in dealing with, and let's talk about patience here for a second. It doesn't matter if you've been married for a ton of years or you're in a relationship, or how can you deal with anything with a partner without patience?
Right.
And let's be honest, everybody has that. You're on my last nerve.
Right. Exactly. That's not what we're talking about.
My grandmother would say, I have one nerve and you're on it.
And you are on it.
And that was it.
Jumping up and down on my last nerve.
Right. But and we talked about this too in our relationship. You have to have time. If you get to the point to where you say, look, I need a few minutes, then you should have that. But there should be a coming back together.
Absolutely.
At some point. Some people are like, I need a minute, and they leave to go to the grocery store, and they never come back.
They never come back.
There's stories.
I know, it's terrible, actually.
There's stories. So this is something that, in dealing with, so recognition, you can't change anything without recognizing it. Recognizing that there is trauma brain and some type of trauma response is important in the relationship. But you and your partner have to have patience. Your partner must have patience with you to work through it. And then you have to have patience with yourself. Because anything that has to do, I'm real big, if you follow anything on my channel, I am real big on self-help, but not just self-help, proper self-help. And that is that you are building yourself to be a better you, so that by being a better you, you are a better person for the community and those around you. And so you have to be patient with yourself. And, there have been times that I know you and I both have said to each other, you've come a long way. We don't break up every 5 minutes.
Right.
That's a major thing. And dealing with trauma brain is something that's an ongoing process. And we're going to continue to talk about it some more. And hopefully out of this will come some tips and tools and tricks of the trade that I'm sure if we found out about them, we stumbled into them. But I believe in failing upward. So, but yeah, we thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, we will be back and I will cheers you out. Cheers with the Batman mug.